All right, everybody, thanks for joining us today. We have an exciting topic on tap. We have our co-host and a guest on to chat about referral networks, whether at some point you're going to need them, whether you're buying a home or selling a home, to know who your points of contact are to purchase, sell, or even maintain the home over time. We want to use that as a superpower in continuing to maintain your house and chat about the ins and outs of things to think about in regards to why you would want a good referral network instead of looking around. With that, let me bring in our co-host and guest. How you doing today, gentlemen?
Good
Doing
morning.
well, doing really well.
Having three people on throws us off a little bit. I think it's like
Just kind of waiting there. Oh,
who
who's going first?
who speaks first. Yeah.
Yeah,
So today we've got Keith Kellum joining us. He is both the real estate on the My Home Connection team, as well as has owned, I think he's coming up on his 20th anniversary of owning a painting company. So he's going
Correct.
to play a couple roles today, a little bit of a real estate agent, but mainly from the subcontractor's perspective, things to ask subcontractors and things to be aware of. So we appreciate you joining us today, Keith.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me do just a couple of real quick housekeeping items here. For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Jerod Lee. I'm the associate broker and team lead here at My Home Connection, also known as MHC Realty. Our sponsor for today is the Perfect Home Buying Process that we are in large part working with Summit Funding and Chase Hodgson to help you minimize your cost up to $500 for the appraisal and up to $500 on your inspection at close during your purchase. And then we just have developed a number of other tools that you can use during the home buying process. At some point, we'll also speak about the selling tools that we have as well. But feel free to reach out to us if you want to take advantage of our relocation and lifestyle guide. We've got a podcast series that answers a lot of questions. We love to share real estate secrets with you, so you kind of know the ins and outs and the goings on of buying a home. With that, I will bring these gentlemen back on. And I guess I just wanted to start today. Chase and I were actually just chatting yesterday a little bit about how referrals, specifically on the lending and the agent side, have changed over the years. RESPA used to mandate that we had, three different lenders that we would refer out to individuals, and that translated to a lot of our recommendations with subcontractors as well, having multiple points of contact so that you as consumers can vet them, should do your own research and all that. And that was a very kind of hard and fast, really kind of pounded into us during our you know lifespan of getting our license. And then Keith is a couple of years into it and didn't get quite harped on so bad about how that'll work. So things have changed over time. So we just want to chat through that a little bit. What's your recollection, Chase? You've been in the industry for a long time as well.
yeah. I I'd have to go back and do the research. I don't know that any rules have actually changed, or if it's just the interpretation,
Hmm.
right? Like we were talking about yesterday, it's if you were to do a quick Google search, I think it would tell you that yes, you can refer just one lender or one subcontractor, one whatever, as long as you're not getting paid. I think it's more focused on the paying for leads and the transfer of money and or something of value, right? Whether it's money or at least the term on our side on the lending is receiving something of value.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's more what they focus on, and I think that's really what they should focus on, to make sure that it stays an arm's length transaction throughout.
Yeah, it's a little difficult because you could make a case for both ways, right? If you recommend three lenders or three subcontractors, you know if you've worked with somebody that's really good and takes really good care of your clients, but then you recommend a second, third, or maybe in some cases a fourth, and they haven't done as much work or as much recent work as say somebody you have a high degree of confidence in and they use, is that really uh, the best suited for your clients? You know,
Right.
um, so if I feel highly confident in somebody and I gave a name and I wasn't paid or given value for it,
Right.
there's no um, ulterior motive for doing that. Kind of seems like why wouldn't I place them with the best person to help them with their needs?
Right. I kind of see myself as a connector. Like I love that. I love being able to put people together with other people in my sphere in order to solve their problems or in order to help them out. Right. Like that is ultimately like probably my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, but I think with that, I've got, geez, I don't even know. I'm saying how many years in this industry I have would date me. But just around construction and, living here my entire life, I have, a group of people that I've worked with and I trust to take care of my clients and to be honest with my friends and to, all of those things. And that's taken me decades to get this group. And so for me, when I refer out, it's always just the one. And it's not like you said, there is no ulterior motive other than to make sure if I'm referring someone that they're going to take the best care of the people I'm referring them to. Right. And I think, ultimately the best way to do it is, hey, you're welcome to go to whoever you want. When I need something done, this is who I use because I have that experience with them and I know it. Because you can't guarantee every time you refer somebody it's going to work out well, right?
Yeah, and I think your point there is extremely valid, especially when we kind of revisit, what we've talked about in shows in the past, and that is all three of our approaches to, we operate a relational business, right? We're not just transactional, and the people that we refer, it's a relationship. It's knowing that we are going to take good care of our clients as if it was our transaction or a close friend or family member's transaction. And the further you get in making recommendations, if I know John is really, really good and he's hyper focused on taking the best care of you, but then I give you John, Jeff's, and Jim's, you know, uh, you know, I would want to be recommended to the person that's got my best interest at heart, and not
Right.
everybody conducts a business like that. But I think your point is good that I'm going to give you the name of the person that I would use if I was in your shoes, because in some cases I might need to make a different lender referral because they've got some hyper unique, purchasing scenario that just doesn't fit
Right.
in your wheelhouse. So that would be a situation. But generally speaking, you know,
Yes.
you're my go-to because you cover the large gamut of buyers' needs.
Right. Right. And there is some of that feeling, understanding what it is that your friend or your client or whoever you're referring, right, or that needs the referral, understanding their needs, right.
Hmm.
So that's the referral partner should probably change based on what their needs are, and you want to try to match personalities. But ultimately, for me, I've done so much, in this industry for so long that I have a set of go-tos and that's it for me. Because and it's not that there aren't other people out there that would do a great job and that would be honest and would treat the clients well, but I don't have experience with them.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think that's another good aspect of what we're looking for is, where is the heart of our referral at that they're going to take good care of you, but then also the personality match. If you had two people that have equal heart and you say, hey, disc profile is a very commonly used personality assessment in our industry. So DISC, we again, if they're equally matched from a servant perspective, who's a good personality fit. You wouldn't necessarily match two people on different ends of the spectrum with totally different personalities. So we also factor that in as well. And to your larger point, this has taken years, decades to develop these resources. These aren't just names that are loosely, tossed around. I know, Keith, you being in the paint business, I mean, a huge percentage of your day is is referring people as you go about your day, isn't it?
Absolutely. I say all the time that this looks like a paint contracting business, but it's really a relationship business.
Amen. Yeah.
And that's just the bottom line. People do business with people that they like to do business with, and that's and like Chase said, you don't get it right all the time, but you know you develop a relationship and you have a track record of okay, well, even if something does go wrong, I'm confident that they're able to fix it. Like
Right.
like that's my personal definition of a journeyman is somebody that can fix their own problems. You know?
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
Right.
You're in a unique position. I mean, Chase and I to some extent as well, but the downstream or I should say the upstream work that you do, if you refer somebody, a drywaller, right? They can either make, just the work that they do could either make your life, great or miserable, right?
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so there's a lot in addition to what we've already talked about that you're also, factoring in. But I love your additional point, and that is, hey, none of us are perfect. If we're professing to be, we're lying to you. But when, if things should go wrong, who's going to step up and make it right? And sometimes it's everybody collectively, right? We've done things that weren't necessarily our fault, but we've stepped up and as a group make it right to accomplish the client's objectives.
Yeah.
I've struggled to come up with a project as an example where nothing went wrong.
Right.
you know,
Good
it's
luck.
just the nature of the business. Yeah.
Yeah.
We,
Yeah, we do a lot, in our industry to, I think a good analogy's been, kind of ducks, right? Our feet underwater is just flailing and we're trying to be calm and casual, you know, as you see us on top of the water, I think that's a good kind of visual for us.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
calmer
pretty
we
much.
stay, the calmer our clients can stay. But in reality, there's a lot of things going on, right? There's not many, if any, points in the whole transaction that you're not really just keeping the ball moving down the field.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I like what you said there too. Not to go, to get too far off track, but where you said that we're not all perfect. I think that's in building, and probably everybody does the same thing, right? You want to refer people that you like, right? But you also want to refer people that are like-minded,
mm-hmm.
and understanding that things will happen. Jerod, like you've had to be frank with me in the past, right? Like if you thought I wasn't doing something right, but we're open to those conversations as something that we want to grow together with, right? And we don't take offense. And so helping to understanding the end goal and the client is the most important thing, and not letting ego get in the way, and just like that's an integral part in building out your referral base, I think, and the type of people that you surround yourself with and that you
Yeah,
want to grow with.
yeah, I absolutely love that because there are times where you might see something in the client that I don't see. It's like, hey, just so you know, I had this conversation. I haven't seen this before. Something must have changed, and I haven't heard exactly what's going on, but let's be aware of that.
Hmm.
That tight knit of a group can tamp anxiety, can address issues sooner than later. In some cases, it was nothing, and we just kind of perceived something, but at least we talked about it. And in some
Right.
cases, it is something, and then we dug in. I'm like, hey, thanks for giving me a heads up because I was able to uncover, that such and such came up, and it's kind of a little bit of a curveball. Let's get ahead of that as best we can.
Yeah, and also understanding that it it may not seem like much to us,
Mm.
but if it's something to the client, it's something, and you need to you need to address it, right?
Yeah, and those some things get big quickly if we don't address it.
it's all about perspective. And that's another thing I say all the time is it doesn't it doesn't matter what happened. It only matters what they think happened.
Right.
Because if they think there's a problem, then there's a problem. So, and just because there's a problem doesn't really mean there's a problem. So it's really, how you present things, how you, uh, the picture that you give them, you're in control of that. And the easier you make it on them, the easier it is for the whole process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what I also want to touch on too is, the network that gets put together, the things that need to happen during these transactions, during the purchase or the sell, need to happen, and they need to happen in a timely manner, right?
Yep.
And so, somebody kind of needs to be a project manager, or the whole group needs to be a project manager, and know, I can't just dump this over here and expect it to be done. If Keith and I are working on helping somebody sell a house and they need to have it painted before they sell it, we're working in lockstep to talk about why you would paint it, what's it going to cost, is it going to be done in time? Because if we go too deep into the prime selling season, we might miss out on some buyers, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then we just work together, not just, hey, here's a name, let me know when it's painted and I'll get back with you.
Yeah.
That's not helpful.
Yeah. And there's really not many things more important to people, right? Because we all are dealing with the real estate aspect. Obviously, Keith, you're on a couple different levels, right? But even if you're not painting for a new home, or if you're doing a remodel, you're in their space, you're in their personal space, and they're being up, it's putting them in limbo until you're done. And so understanding how important every little piece of the process is it's it'll make or break it, right? Like, because people don't spend more money than they do on their house, right? It's their biggest purchase, and then it becomes their personal space. And so we just have to realize how important all of this is.
Yeah, yeah, and being able to trust the recommendations of the network that you're in. I know that Keith is not going to upsell, something that's unnecessary, right? Because then that reflects bad on me. I just spent all this money, but it didn't raise the value of my house as much as I put into it. Where, hey, it might not raise the value, but it'll probably make it sell quicker because it's one less thing that a buyer, excuse me, has got to do to the house. That level of communication and trust, that there isn't something going on the back end, and now all of a sudden, instead of, kind of an interior semi paint refresh, becomes a full interior and exterior that took 2 months longer than it should have. Again, blowing right by that, potential good selling season. So anyway,
I try not to.
go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
I try not to sell anything. I try to view my position as I'm here to help you buy what it is that you need, and not what you don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
Consultative selling, right? Like it's you're really an advisor or a consultant, trying to help them just achieve whatever goal it is that they have.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious, for the two of you. Like, Keith, what is the number one industry that you refer to? Like, what gets asked the most?
That's a good question. Well, from as a paint contractor, drywall comes in a lot. I have a great drywall guy that he's my go-to. I have an electrician. I have a plumber. Um, the number one would probably be the drywall guy, just for me. Um, as an agent, um, I think well, you've got your inspections,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's probably the biggest one.
And handyman.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah. Because handymans are generalists and can do a lot of things, right? So where is that threshold as handyman? Oh, that's an electrician effort. He can, that handyman can do these things, but once it gets to this point, that becomes an electrician job. But
Right.
quite often you're starting with the handyman. But you're absolutely right on the inspections, right? We always advise, whether you're buying a resale home or
Yeah.
existing home or new construction, get an inspection. If it's an acreage property and it has septic, have the sellers inspect and pump the septic. If they're got a
Yeah.
well, do well inspection, test the water, test the potability, test the throughput. You know,
I love that. Because basically you're like going through, okay, these are all the points that need to be taken care of during a transaction, but you're listing out referral partners, right? People, and that shows you through not obviously you don't need a well on every transaction, but every transaction should have an inspector. Um, if it's not brand new, everybody wants a handyman, and even if it is brand new, they might want to add or change, right? Like
yeah,
that's literally the amount of business that comes from the transaction is incredible, and that shows why those relationships are so dang important.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about those relationships a little bit because I think there's some perspectives to understand. My personal preference is, or I guess my perception is, the larger the business, the more transactional it becomes. Right? The closer I can get to the owner or to somebody that's in the throes, um, they are taking to heart what the client wants to have happen. Versus, once you get, a bunch of employees, you're kind of getting distance from that because an employee doesn't necessarily behave the same way an owner would. Not that they can't, but you know, um, costs start to come into play, right? Once you have employees, there's all kinds of manners of things that come into play there. And I guess, I mean, I don't want to dig too deep into that, but I'm just saying there are things that we take into consideration to keep it relational, to keep it cost effective, but make sure that it's done well. And Keith, if you don't mind speaking to, you know, there are certain things you would want in a business to make sure that liability is minimized, mitigated, if not eliminated. What would I as a homeowner, seller, or buyer want to make sure that I ask, specifically in your space and maybe others, qualifying questions?
Well, that's a good question. I think the size of the business is important, because it, certain businesses can scale well, and and then there's the spot. Everybody's been to their favorite restaurant where they became two restaurants, and then the quality kind of dipped, right?
Yeah, right.
Because the one guy that was holding it all together, now he's split between two spots, and not everybody's holding up their end. And I think that's a generalization that happens across the board. And I mean, somebody's got to be accountable.
Hmm.
I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, who is in charge? Who do I call? Who's going to tell me what's going on, when, what's the schedule? I think um, those would be the most important to me. And in my help you buy philosophy, I always try to, what would I want? Like I've asked you questions over the years of, what should I do, this or that? And you're like, well, what would you want someone to do for you? And I'm like, okay, that's always a great answer. I don't know why I keep asking that question.
Yeah, yeah. I call it one throat to choke, right? If everybody's passing the buck, that's not a good situation to be in. So, but I was more thinking things like being registered as a business, being licensed, uh, you know, insured, right? Because there's things that can happen.
So here in Idaho, they're the only so like a there's only three businesses that I'm aware of that have to have a bond, and those are the plumber, the HVAC, and the fire sprinkler guy, and which makes sense, water and whatnot. Everybody else, general contractors, painters, everybody else, there's a registration, and so to register your business, you have to show proof of liability insurance. And if you state that you have no employees, then that's all you need to prove. But if you are a business with employees, then you also, with your registration, you have to prove workers' compensation. So it's those two insurances that to be a business in Idaho, you have to have. So a quick, easy way to do that. I mean, I imagine Google will get you right there. Is it it's the Idaho Bureau of Occupational Licenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Electricians don't have to carry a bond, huh?
No.
Oh, interesting. I would have assumed them, because that's another one that has to be, because it takes that education and apprenticeship in order to get licensed. So I just figured that they carried that beyond that. Interesting. Learn something new every day.
This brings up a really good point. The one thing that us agents, lenders, really can't do is make sure that all of those things are in place that we're talking about, right? That's that'd be a full-time job, checking to make sure that the people we're referring out meet that criteria. So I would say, as a little bit of a disclaimer, that kind of as a consumer, that's got to be on you to vet that. If those things are of concern, make sure, use the resources that resources that Keith just mentioned, to make sure that they've got a properly registered company, that they've got the licenses that they need, that they got the bonds in place that are going to make you feel comfortable that they're doing the work. Obviously, making sure you're not working with a fly-by-night company, right? Most are going to want some kind of half up front type thing, and then half on completion, right? We've all heard the nightmare stories of paying somebody, I don't know, even a $10,000 job. Here's a $5,000 check, and you never see that person again.
Yeah.
So that, obviously we've worked with our referral network long enough that there's a high degree of confidence that would never happen. Otherwise, it would make it in our network. But
it also doesn't mean it's going to be perfect either, though, right? Like,
right.
Personalities, maybe an employee had a bad day, an off day, like that stuff can happen still.
Yeah.
And I think probably the biggest thing is, that we've got enough experience with these folks that we know if something goes wrong, they're going to do their best to take care of it properly.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Well, and the one thing I would add here too is, My Home Connection, the name actually came out of the idea, when I got into real estate, it was announced, we were told to behave as if we're the hub within a wheel, as best we can, to make sure that wheel gets turning and there's a bunch of spokes, of that wheel. I think, lenders are pretty darn close to that same, analogy. So My Home Connection was based upon the idea that it's highly important to have the right team, not just to have a good agent or a good lender, but to also have a good inspector, a good handyman, for all the reasons that we've already discussed, that they're all keeping this, working and moving to an end goal. If any one of them drops the ball, some might not be quite as traumatic as others. If somebody's got a small part, let's overcome that. Let's get another resource in or whatever. But really, we all have to come together and make sure that, we're committed to getting it into the end zone.
Yeah, I think that if you're running a business of any kind, like, you should be running it this way, right? Like, because I don't. Every business has other pieces that they need, and building those relationships. And I don't know any other way to do business. And I've taken this philosophy through multiple jobs over the years, and I think it's the only way to get things done and done right. And I think I get more business in my lending job by having that network and being open to referring people, right? Being that person that if they need something, I'm the one that they call.
Yeah. Yeah. For all the reasons that we just talked about, everybody in that
Right.
network trusts you, know you can get the job done, know you've got the experience. And that's in large part where I was going with this, My Home Connection. You know, we do have, and we're further formalizing the list of participants within our referral network. We'll link that directory in the show notes below. But, you know, reach out to us, any one of us in the referral network. Again, you know, pretty tight knit group, all relational minded, all, you know, some degree of an SLA, a service level agreement that, hey, we as a team, you know, we return calls in a timely manner. We bid jobs at a,
Mm-hmm.
in a cost effective manner. Not necessarily always the cheapest, because, you know, you don't want to do cheap work. But anyway, there's this, you know, kind of agreement within the group. So when you need somebody, and you will, right? You know, our I guess slogan is love your home, right? Even if you buy a new construction home, hopefully you had the inspection, but, you know, in a year or two, something comes up, that referral network still comes into play. You know, you
Right.
still need to find a resource to get that done. So it's not if you're going to need somebody within the referral network, but, you know, when.
Right.
Some of them are almost in every transaction. But over the life of a house or multiple homes, you're going to touch almost all of those, right? I got a plumbing issue, like, you know,
Yeah.
at some point, you know, even if you want
Yep.
to do some improvements, I need a plumber. Hopefully it's not, you know, a reaction, you know, to something that came up. What's your thoughts, Chase, on kind of the appraisal side of things? Do you see a lot of that coming into play? Because you were, what, an appraisal for the better part of 10 years as well?
Yeah, I was. Man, so for me, it's really important. We've gotten to a place in lending where we get to kind of pick our panel. We can't pick a specific appraiser for, a certain transaction, but I get to add those onto my panel. And I think in real estate, it's still really important. They're always going to be an important piece, as much as, well, you know this as well as anybody, Jerod, as much as, you know, the automation and, you know, automated valuation coming out, none of that really tells you like what a house is worth, right? It doesn't tell you the degree of differences from the finishes. It doesn't tell you the updating, the remodeling, like all that stuff, right? Because especially in a state like Idaho, where we're a non-disclosure state, you just they're really important, and there's a lot of transactions that go on privately, and so being able to have, you know, an appraiser in your, or two or three or whatever, you know, because they can specialize in different areas, you know, whether it's commercial or residential or big homes or whatever, right? So having that person is, I think, super important still.
Yeah, yeah. I was also thinking about the idea of a, you know, we talk about planning a lot. So, you know, somebody that kept ahead of keeping the home maintained well, instead of just deferred maintenance and then put it on the
Yeah.
market and wonder why it's not selling and why they didn't get top dollar on it. You know, from an appraiser perspective, I guess there'd have to be some highly deficient things to make it lesser value, but you can certainly appreciate it's going to take longer to sell.
Well, so initially, yes, right? But one thing that, you know, like the mechanical stuff that you run into, like if an HVAC is like 10 years old, they could put something in the report that says, hey, this needs to be inspected, and then you have an HVAC guy come out and say, no, this is at its life. Now you are affecting value. You are affecting that sale. Same thing with the roof. You know, there's some of those items. I mean, and then it can affect it, right? Not as greatly, like if the floor covering is a little worn out, or if it needs to be painted or stuff like that. That tends to go more towards the marketing part, right? Making it
Mm-hmm.
easier for you to sell the home,
Yeah.
as opposed to taking a big chunk in value, unless, right? Because neighborhoods have, they have a life cycle, right? You know, where they're new, and then they they start to get run down, and then a new generation comes in and starts fixing them up. Well, if you're the one house in that neighborhood that isn't being fixed up, right, or going through a big remodel, so it really depends. But generally speaking, yeah, I think you're right. It's not going to have a huge effect on the value side, but marketing it could really affect that, and how you do your job and how well.
Yeah, well, Keith, you and I have had conversations around what it does when a buyer comes in, or even prior to buyers, agents. We walk into a place, and the first thing we see is dinged baseboards and, you know, chipped corners and just things that draw your eye to, hey, deferred maintenance, right? This place has not been well taken care of. They're not even looking to, keep the stuff an average homeowner should do to keep it looking nice. So therefore, what's going on with the big stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you have a reputation of hey, I'm here to help, and that kind of an attitude, then um, it's never not a difficult conversation to be like, you're gonna have to clean this up, or you're gonna. I mean, this is necessary. Especially if there's a disconnect there. We're like, it seems fine. Let's just, whatever. It. But I think that's where the trust comes in. They're like, hey, this needs to be done, and then to be taken seriously in that regard is, a trust issue, right?
Yeah.
And again, people do business with people that they'd like to do business with, and
Yeah. Yeah, that's always an uncomfortable situation for us agents to say, because, there's no way a homeowner doesn't want top value. So they come out, do a CMA. When we've talked in the past about how to price a home and the different considerations of pricing a home, but, we have to come out as agents and say, hey, there might be some adjustments that we have to make, and part of it's made on condition. Like you said, where's it at in the life cycle? Look, your other 10 comps, or let me just use 5, maybe. Three of the 5 have been updated with appliances and countertop and whatever. Like, this is an adjustment here, and part of it can be condition. Going back to the appraisal mindset, Chase, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's true. Condition is a big thing. It goes to uh, it's a little more difficult, right? So there's basically it's the appraiser's judgment, right, on the condition. So I can't tell you you're going to lose 10 grand or 20 grand or 50 grand. It really goes to his judgment on what the neighborhood is doing, like I was saying before. So if your other comparables haven't been fixed up either, then there is no adjustment, right? So it's really the surrounding neighborhood, and that's why the appraisers are so important, right? The surrounding neighborhood is going to tell you how important that fixing it up is going to be from the appraisal standpoint. Now, if everybody else is fixing theirs up or remodeling, then it could be a big adjustment. But if you're all about the same, it's not, and then it falls back on your job, on the marketing part. Like, do you want to sell better than your neighbor next door that hasn't fixed up? You haven't either, but it's the same house. Which ones, how do you make yourself first and for more money?
Yeah. Yeah. We have these memes, in our industry, and I think most people have seen it, right? How the seller looks at their home, how a buyer looks at their home, how an inspector looks at their home,
Yep.
It's true. So we have to, as an agent, communicate how people are looking at this. And then, by the way, what are the things we can do? I guess ultimately what I was coming around to is reach out to us, use our referral network, not just when you bought the home or right before you're looking to sell it. Let's have the dialogue as soon as possible. Keep the house, most people want to live in a nice house anyway. And the more you stay on top of that, the better positioned you're going to be to sell the house, later on, rather than having those awkward conversations like, that carpet might be fine to you, but, somebody buying it sees 3 other homes with brand new carpet,
Right.
Let's talk about what the life, hopefully your agent that helped you buy the house talks about what the life expectancy, roughly is going to be. Anyway, there's all kinds of questions, but deferred maintenance is brutal. So
Yeah.
get part of the network, talk about things, like getting the HVAC tech out there, right? If I'm showing a buyer a house and I can tell this furnace hasn't been serviced in, as best I can tell, ever, I'm going to tell my buyer to be concerned,
Right. Right.
versus, hey, maybe this isn't new, but you can clearly tell that it's been well maintained. Here's service records, here's some stickers, the filter, at least it's been, been replaced fairly recently for this one. And it looks like generally the seller's keeping the house well maintained.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think it goes back to why, I think it goes back to how we know that our people are good, because we have to use them that much,
yeah.
right? Like nearly every transaction, and how important it is for us to have that network to be able to give you the proper guidance, right? And be able to get you in a place where you're either safe buying the home you're buying, or right, getting top dollar for what you're selling.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your thoughts, Keith? And we're getting, past our time, which, never happens, right? But on the painting side for, listing a home, just, I know it's a tough question because you can see all manner of things, but what's your thoughts on the cost effectiveness of just having some paint refresh in the house?
Well, the counsel I generally give is, I call it etch a sketch. You know, like you basically just want to etch a sketch the place, because if every room is a different color, that's not a very good feel for someone walking into a home. And if and then, and then you have to take in consideration, is the color that I'm going to pick to paint the whole house, are they going to hate it anyway? And so I wasted, my time and my money. So I think a very basic etch a sketch to a reasonable soft color that just kind of goes with everything is great across the board, because you can't go wrong, right? It's move in ready, and if you want to add some color, you add some color. But those are the big things, I think, in deciding, how far to take it is, because it happens, right? You people, you do so much, and then you walk in and they gut it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's a couple things that came to mind there. One is, think of it like a builder, they build a spec
Exactly.
based upon the highest degree of likelihood of most people wanting to buy it, right? They don't put in obnoxious colors or weird fixtures or things like that. It's not hyper personalized because they want the lion's share of the buyer pool to be interested in the property. So kind of when we sell it, yeah, to Key's point, if you got, one room with the, robin blue, accent wall, and the next one with a orange accent wall, you know what I mean? Like, it probably would make sense to find the one, the more neutral color and invest a couple dollars, because people don't want to figure out how to get that orange or blue wall to disappear.
Right.
Also, you want that you want a clean feel, right? You want to walk in and be like, this is nice. I can put my couch there. I can,
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that.
Yeah, that's how I always advise my sellers is change the filter at which you're looking at your house, walk in as if you were a brand new buyer, and what are you going to think? Oh, I got to fix that. Oh, I got to redo that. Oh, I hate that. I mean, you can't identify them all, but, try to quit looking at it from a seller's perspective and go, man, as a buyer, do you have the money to invest the paint in that wall? Do you have the knowledge to do it? Because if you can't do it, if you can do it, it's going to cost X. If you can't do it because you don't know how, it's going to cost Y. You know what I mean? And if you don't know what why is, right, if you can do it, you might have an idea on what paint costs. But if you're going to have a contractor do it, you know, house A, you might have that question, but house B, you don't, because they went through the effort to kind of neutralize the home. And now you don't have that doubt, that distraction in it. So I'm just saying, you know, back to the topic at hand here, figure out how to keep your house, you know, in a non-deferred mode, that it's properly maintained, because one, that'll save you a lot of money up front, right? The maintenance of your furnace and your AC and all that, that's just, even if you're not going to sell your house, you know, I looked at I don't know, it wasn't more than a handful of years old, but the seller didn't pay attention to it, figuring that everything was fine. But, you know, one of the I don't remember what type of connection it was, but he had to buy a whole nother furnace, you know, because there was something that wasn't quite connected right, or anyway, I don't remember, but had he had done ongoing maintenance, it would have been fine. So anyway, we got all kinds of these stories, right?
Most of them pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, back to the original slide when we started here, the overlay is, you know, treat your network as a superpower. Keep yourself, you know, out of issues when you're buying the home as best you can, and keep yourself out of issues when you go, while you have the home, and potentially keep yourself out of issues when you go to sell the home. It's just a great way to go. People that, you know, are watching out for your short, mid, and long-term interest, who are cost-effective to use, that are properly licensed with the right insurance, you know, those kind of things. And that's what we develop, you know, as a team. And again, you know, we put a directory together of all of our partners within it that have that same mindset to help you, you know, love your home. Back to the
Absolutely.
logo. Slogan, I guess.
I like it.
So anyway, with that, you know, we could talk about this stuff all day, but I appreciate you guys going a little long here today and sharing your thoughts, your opinions on all the things that people should consider, especially from your perspective. Hopefully everybody takes value in that. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll wish everybody a blessed one. Take care.